So they banned it?
Yes, they they banned r/combat footage. Like I think today, and I think we all know why. They had some pictures of magical soldiers from a special little country being kidnapped and held hostage. And I don't think r/combat footage liked that one. I don't think they liked it. I wonder why. But
yeah, it's interesting. Hey, remember when this was supposed to be a weekly show where we reviewed books?
yeah, but
Yeah, that was a lie.
I don't even really know what happened. It was mostly like school, I guess. But whatever.
Yeah. Well, anyway, welcome back to the Knights of Descent show.
Yeah, we're back.
I always say it's a special
die.
episode, but today it is actually a special episode because it's not about books. What have you been doing
animated
recently,
media.
Rats?
What?
What have you been doing?
Well, I mean, I've been doing a lot of things. I lift weights, I get high grades, but recently I watched a certain animated show on YouTube, and I thought it was really good.
Really, tell me about it. What is this show called?
I think it's called Ongezellig.
Yeah,
Zelig for short. And it's about three interesting adopted Dutch girls and their adventure to write a history report.
Yeah.
And it's possibly the most important film of the 21st century, if I can be so bold.
It's a pretty bold statement. So background here. Ongezellig is a 6-part short animated pilot episode for a web series by a Dutch studio called Studio Massa. I don't know anything about them because I don't speak fluent Dutch, but
but you're learning.
Yes, I started learning Dutch on Duolingo.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, it follows the adventures of 3 adopted sisters, Maya, Coco, and Mai, on their quest to complete their history presentation.
Yes, indeed.
So, why did you watch this show? It's this Dutch
So,
anime.
I mean, this show is kind of a cornerstone of Shardy, right?
Yeah.
It's a common site on Shardy, and I'm like, okay. I mean, I don't browse Shardy almost ever. I think it's kind of cool, but I did find some of them interesting. So I'm like, okay, what is this little show over here? And then, I'm thinking like this is probably gonna be pretty long, but if you actually look at it, it's like 20 minutes in total. It's basically a pilot episode, as John said. And I watched it, and it was an absolute gem. It was fantastic. It was funny. It was sad. It was relatable. It's full to the brim with references, which I think is one of the main things we're going to be talking about today. And ultimately, it's probably one of the best animated shows on YouTube right now, I would say.
Yeah. After you posted in the group chat, and I went and watched it, and I was quite impressed. I think the first thing that stuck out to me was it's not American. It's very clearly not American in its humor, because American humor, there's American animated television shows don't understand how to make jokes about serious subject matter. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah,
like they can't. The joke is itself the shock value.
Yes. I'm thinking about like Family Guy.
Yeah, like Family Guy is an example, or South Park, stuff like that. The Simpsons.
Yeah.
There's even like the independent like web animation. Like what's the one about is it Has Been Hotel? What's the one where
is that like the demons in the hotel?
Yeah,
they like run a hotel. Yeah, it's Has Been Hotel, I think.
Okay, it's a very different. Ongezellig has a very different kind of humor.
Yes, it's incredibly subtle, and just it's more. I would consider it more real. And yes, it can also make jokes about very serious subjects, as we will soon see.
Yeah. So I guess sort of what is the I mean the it's not clear if the animator is our guy. Like that's it's but it certainly
I
seems like
mean,
it.
it what he references, I think he's more our guy than not.
Yeah, like
I
there's
think
stuff in there
I
that you
suspect
wouldn't say, you
he's like
wouldn't
a
know about, and you wouldn't say if you weren't kind of in the know.
yeah, he brings obviously Coco's backstory is very it's not something that's talked about outside of our circles.
No,
What's
it's very
happening,
obvious.
what's happened there.
Yeah, so let's go
So
through. Yeah, let's go through the characters. There's not that many
yeah, yeah,
characters. Like
yeah.
there's only three main characters. So the first is Coco. Let's just start there.
Yeah,
Who is Coco?
so Coco is I think she's like a high school girl. I think they're all high school
Yeah,
girls
they're all in high
basically.
school. It all takes
Um,
place on October 14th, 2019.
okay, base. But she is of Boer descent from South Africa. Um, and she was adopted by what me and John suspect are like half Indonesian or maybe a mixed race family of like Indonesian and white.
Who live in the Netherlands, by the way.
Yeah, who live in the Netherlands, and she was adopted by them.
But not at
And
birth. She was
not at
adopted.
birth. She's like 5 or 6 years old. There's like one flashback where you see her, like with the adoption papers, I think.
No, you can see there's the paint. There's the sketch in the background. It's sort
Oh,
of like
where?
what they most desire.
Yeah.
And Coco's sketch is her with her in her like little in on her little Afrikaner farm in South Africa with her parents.
Okay. Okay. But it's. I think it's pretty obvious what happened to lead to her becoming an orphan. Uh,
Yes.
Realistically, what happened is what's happened to hundreds of white families in South Africa. Uh, like, well, what's that political party called in South Africa that like chants kill the Boer?
Oh, the EFF.
Yeah, I think like their militant branches or other black militant branches will go to white farms, jam their radio communication, and then kill everyone inside and then leave. Um, and ultimately, that's probably what happened to Coco's family, or maybe her parents were just killed on the streets of South Africa or something like that. But
Yeah, but it's implied that they're farmers.
yeah, it something terrible happened, and it was because of reasons that normies don't like to talk about, but our people are more than happy to talk about.
Yeah,
So
I think it's interesting that like Coco is really the good guy of the story.
yes,
Coco
yes,
basically cares about her. Both of the two other sisters are incredibly selfish and rather unlikable. But
disavow, but yes,
Coco is sort of the glue that holds the family together.
yes,
And
definitely.
the one time she breaks is when Maya brings up her parents,
Yes, yeah,
and it's
in a very
clearly
negative light. Yeah,
you can clearly tell that something very bad happened.
yeah,
Um,
and yeah, exactly. Um,
by the way,
you
the
know,
show is free on YouTube. Just go watch it. There was even someone made an AI dubbed English version. It's 25 minutes. Just go watch it before you watch this episode.
yeah, just Google Ongezellig, Onge, and then Zellig, and then there's a playlist of all the episodes plus some other small cool animations that have been made.
Yeah.
Um,
So then
but
there's okay, keep going.
so I mean, just one other thing about Coco, she's like, I don't know how to describe her. I think she's like infinitely positive, basically.
Right.
Except when her parents were mentioned. Although when her parents were mentioned, she didn't like go insane. What I'll just say what she did. She grabbed Maya, which is the girl that kind of made fun of her for being an orphan, and she held her outside of a window and basically said, "Apologize, or I'll drop you out of the window and kill you."
And then
But
immediately snap back to like be normal and apologize.
yeah, but like I mean, she's like kind, and I wonder if it's out of like gratefulness for maybe having something approaching a family again, or
Yes.
if it's something like that.
Yes. And she doesn't like. It's clear her entire. She's also somewhat of a luddite. Um, she doesn't like all of her technology is like 20 years out of date.
That is true. She's completely computer illiterate, and that kind of starts this entire story.
Yeah,
So
she also has this like tiny like PC that's like literally from the early 2000s, and she has like a flip phone. And this like the show takes place in 2019. It's obviously like a modern
yeah,
show. Everyone uses modern tech. Um,
okay. I
it's not
mean,
really explained, but I think that's probably something that'll happen if the full series is ever released. I think there is like something to that, but
yeah, I
she's
think
also a
there is.
fan of Pierre Neef, who was a very famous South African landscape painter. In
I
fact,
mean,
you can
she,
see one of Pierre Neef's landscapes hung up in her room.
yeah, she's also, if I remember correctly, that flag with the whatever the gazelle on it or whatever it is. That's like the Boer Nationalist Party, right? The green and yellow flag.
Yeah, that is like a Boer symbol. I don't know if there's like any party that uses that, but yeah.
Yeah, and like, I mean, that's kind of our guy stuff again. It's like if you're willing to talk about stuff like that and put it like that would never be in like Hazbin Hotel or
No,
anything.
no, there were
Like,
nothing
yeah,
references to Boer nationalism in Hasbin Hotel.
yeah.
So, anything else about Coco?
No, she's a pretty simple character. Uh, I'd say she's the most simple character, but maybe I think there's more to her story that we just don't know yet. So,
Yeah, yeah. All right. Next is My Mai. So who's My Mai?
My is, I mean, she's basically a 4chan femcel. Uh, I think that's more or less true. Uh, I think she also probably plays like Hearts of Iron 4 and stuff like that. She's she's like, where do I even begin? She was born in Nagasaki. She's like 100% Japanese. And then she was adopted by the same family.
Yes.
Um, and we don't know anything about her backstory. There's like some theories that like she has a sister that's like looking for her. So maybe this adoption wasn't 100% legal. Who knows? But that's just like speculation. I don't think that's ever been brought up in the show proper.
No, no,
But
it's not.
um, ultimately, she is she basically LARPs being European and LARPs being Dutch specifically.
Yeah, she's a Dutch
Um,
ultranationalist.
yeah,
Um,
she's 100% Japanese, like ethnically, but she is a Dutch ultranationalist. She has a VOC flag on her wall, which is the Dutch East Indies Company. Um, she fucking hates Belgium. It's
yes, yeah,
with
she
a
hates
passion.
the Barbont Belge.
Yes, yes. And ultimately, she she's I find her actually to be a very interesting character and like an interesting exploration of like non-white LARPing as Western people,
Yeah, because she
which
clearly has an identity. Like one thing we do know about her backstory, she had an identity crisis, in her late teens, because you can see in the portraits that she like dyed her hair orange
yeah,
and
like
started
her
wearing
hair. I think, and
contact
actually, I
lenses.
think so. Yeah, she wears blue contact lenses, and she also has dyed her hair orange. Although I think what actually happened is she tried to dye it blonde, and
Yeah, but
her hair is so dark that it just turns orange.
yes,
Um,
yes,
and you can see by the way her eyes are drawn that she has like the canthal tilt, like a average Asian person. Um,
yes.
and like clearly she is of Japanese descent, but she's larping very hard at being Dutch, and it's really it's a really interesting character to me. I
Yeah,
find it
but no
really
one. The
interesting.
interesting thing is, no one in the show except for Coco, who's very nice, treats that as normal. Like it's a very. It's not like a thing within the logic of the show.
Yeah, I mean it's like it's almost
Yeah,
like it's like this weird like expectation measurement because like maybe like in the 1950s or 60s if she had moved to the Netherlands maybe she would have been expected. I don't think she would have expected to dye her hair but like to act more Dutch. But now in like a post nationalist Europe that's like declining, into this multiracial kind of uh, depression, like her like LARPing as trying to be Dutch is like weird.
Yes.
It's like this unacceptable third way that less and less people are doing.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like she clearly has a total crisis of identity, which
Yeah.
like in the first episode is not explored, but it's clear that she's in deep denial about her origins and sees herself as literally racially Dutch.
Yes, I
Um,
mean she can't accept, the fact that she's not racially Dutch, and it's kind of like it's just a cope. I mean, this is like I really think this is honestly another our guy moment. I think it's like kind of exposing this cope that a lot of like propositional nation civic nationalist types have, where like you know if you act Dutch, you are Dutch, and that's just not true fundamentally. Like Dutch, like the Dutch race is blood. It's blood that goes back thousands of years, and there's nothing you can do about it if you don't have it.
yeah, it's interesting because she represents an identity struggle that I see with a lot of people on the right who are maybe not as comfortable with their ethnic origins. Um,
What do you like? What example? Like, what do you mean?
they're all over the place.
Are you talking about like Prussian monarchists who like live in North Dakota or something? Like,
No. I'm talking about like people who are really
oh,
like East
like mixed
Asian.
race.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
It is essentially an identity crisis.
yeah, definitely. This is it's an interesting thing because like a lot of Asians are just white people, and they're just integrated into like white cultures of Western countries, but and they're almost treated that way unless they like bow to like identity politics, well, not identity politics, but bow to like liberalism or whatever.
Right.
uh
And the interesting thing is
and
that like
ultimately like a lot of like Asian youth or younger people in the West can like only find uh any political path to power through like ethno-nationalist or pseudo ethno-nationalist groups. So that is an interesting truth.
yeah. And well, the thing is, it would have been really easy to write Coco as an ultranationalist.
Yeah, that would have
It
been
would have
easy.
been
Yeah,
very easy to write Coco as an ultranationalist, but I don't think it would not have the same realism to it.
yeah. She like the thing about like I mean, would you call Coco a Stacy?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a Stacy.
She's not like super smart. She's very nice.
She's like I would call her a pseudo Stacy, more or less. Um, and like Stacy's and Chad's oftentimes don't have like this identity problem at all. So it's like why would they ever be nationalistic? Like she is just a boar and she knows it, and like she has like the boar flag on her wall, but like she's not obsessed with it.
Right.
But,
She has no
like
discomfort with her own
like
identity.
like here's the thing, like she descends from Dutch farmers who lived in the Netherlands for thousands of years, so she has there's no blood conflict here. But like so like she doesn't have to make up for that. Well, like my has no Dutch blood at all, and she has to like basically LARP 24/7 as this like caricature of a Dutch person
Yes.
to feel welcome at all.
To the point where she even lies about being born in Drenthe,
Yes, in Amsterdam.
In Amsterdam.
Dude, if Elon's Mars colonization pops off, I'm founding the town of Amsterdam. It's gonna be epic.
Yeah. All right. Anything else about My?
Um, I mean, I think it's said in the show that she's like like she knows about 4chan. Maybe
It's
I
not
don't
like
remember.
explicitly mentioned, but
She has like 4chan stuff. Like she's kind of like I wouldn't be surprised if she like is sitting in like our guy live streams shit posting. Like that's what I
yeah,
was
yeah. All right. Now on
yeah.
to the main character, Maya. Who is Maya?
Oh man. I'm like Maya is my eternal love. Um I have fallen in love with a cartoon character. That's all I will say. You describe Maya. You describe Maya.
Yeah, so Maya is like the main character of the show, and
Yeah.
her sort of character arc or lack thereof is the point of the raison d'etre for the
Yeah.
pilot episode. Maya is the only sister who wasn't adopted. Um,
Yes.
she's probably a Hapa.
Yeah, I
That's
suspect. I don't think she's fully Indonesian because her eyes are green and her skin is
yes.
pale. But
Even
I
in
will
the
say
scenes
that she
where like
probably
it
is.
in the scenes
She
where they're
probably
depicted
is.
as
Yeah.
realistic, she has green eyes.
Yeah. So I will say she's probably half Indonesian. I suspect her parents or one of her parents are descendants of like colonial migrants from not from like recently, but from when like the Dutch colonial empire collapsed. A lot of the Indonesian elite fled to the Netherlands.
Yes.
So I think that she's probably a descendant of that and a Dutch father or mother, whatever. So that she's kind of like an interesting dialogue on like race mixing in Europe. But we could talk about that later. I want to talk about other stuff about her first.
Yeah, so Maya is, as I said, she is the main character, and the
Yeah.
title of the show, Ongezellig, which means like antisocial, is about her. Maya is like cripplingly antisocial.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Definitely.
completely has no friends, is completely unable to communicate with normal people. Basically, just like sits in her room all day.
Yeah. And then when she goes to school, she sits in the bathroom at lunch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she she's she's a very interesting character. I'm just trying to think about where to begin with her. I mean, it's clear. I think she kind of represents. She's definitely like the lost generation of millions of people today. Um, she she like we see in her development as a child that like when she was very young she was normal, and then as she got older she became more and more isolated. She's also a porn addict, which I think should be mentioned.
Yes, that is like, and
She's addicted
it's
to
not
like
really played as a joke as much as you might think.
yeah, it's more like she watches this like unhealthily often, and she watches it while like her entire family's in the house,
Yes.
and like her sister Coco walks in on it twice, uh, and ultimately, actually, yeah, I'll just describe this. Ultimately, Coco, um, she basically mistakes the history tab of a fire, or I think it was a Brave browser.
Yeah, it's
Um,
she's like a technology. She's like a
yeah. Like
like
Coco doesn't know anything about. Oh yeah, like Maya knows a bit about technology.
yeah,
She
she
has
plays
Brave as a
this like
browser.
she has like stream like Steam and the Brave browser, so she's like that slightly above average
Yeah, yeah.
uh
But
desktop user.
yeah, Coco basically hopped on Maya's computer and clicked on the history tab of Brave and saw some interesting Japanese octopus related content. And she made her history presentation about that. I think it was called like the history of Japanese love or
No,
something
it's a
like that.
history of mollusk love in ancient
Yeah,
Japan.
yeah. And you know, ultimately that kind of pops off the latter
Yeah,
two-thirds of
like
the
it's the
story.
setup for the show's conflict.
Exactly. Um, and I mean, Maya's clearly broken in some way. She's addicted to porn. She has no ability to communicate with other people. Um, she sits in her room all day. And she doesn't really have. She has a pretty bad relationship with her sisters too. I would
Yes.
say.
She
With
sees Coco
my
as basically being. She has these imaginary worlds that she lives like retreats to when she's
yeah,
alone,
yeah.
and in the worlds, Coco is like a Disney princess, and
And
Mai is SpongeBob,
my is like Japanese SpongeBob. Yeah.
and that she sees them as these like caricatures trying to like ruin her life, pretty much.
Yeah, I can sense like unfortunately there's definitely a serious resentment in Maya,
Yes.
especially towards Coco. Um, and I mean that honestly doesn't surprise me because obviously Maya is like the actual child of the parents, and Coco's purely adopted. But Coco is just so much more successful in aspects of life than Maya has been. So I think there's some serious resentment present there. And in the show, by the end of the first pilot episode, maybe some of that's been resolved a little bit, but it's still there. Um, and Maya still clearly has problems by the end of the show because she basically refuses to play a board game with her sisters. Even though if this was like a more typical story, she probably would have said yes, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
setup. It's like a setup for future character development.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so it's interesting to talk about her imagination because a surprising amount of the 25 minutes of the show takes place in her imagination.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that a bit?
Well, I mean, first you have the island, which is, I mean, that's kind of I think there's an ethnic aspect to it. Her being partially Indonesian.
Yeah, she always
Like
imagines
she,
herself like
yeah,
wearing a
she has
rice
her
hat.
own,
It's
yeah,
it's interesting. She imagines herself wearing a rice hat in her like fantasy.
yeah, she has a rice hat and she's on like a small tropical island. Um, and obviously that's like a representation of her isolated ideal.
Right.
And then people like Mai Mai interrupted. Like Mai
Yes.
Mai, who was depicted as a VOC like officer in like a Dutch colonial officer, kidnaps her, and then it's basically uh, throws her into the rice fields. Um, and also in that scene, you get to see how like mildly degenerate Maya is
Yes,
by
like Maya is like completely.
by suggesting like incest. Basically, just go watch the show. It's fucking hilarious, but it is deeply degenerate. But it's like this is like a suggestion spawned from the consumption of degenerate media and other such things.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and that's kind of her first place, and then also Coco can infiltrate this imaginary space uh, by I think she does it once later in the show. Basically, Maya's having kind of a mental break about having to make a history presentation, and also this was right after Coco threatened to throw her out of a window, and Maya enters this fantasy island, and Coco appears as her kind of caricature form and just starts harassing her, and then Maya kicks her into the ocean, and then she's like back to her ideal state, being alone on the island.
Yeah. There's another in another imaginary world is her like
Yeah,
the wall
her
with
fake
her two
friends.
fake friends.
Yeah,
Now, I don't so the girl there's two, there's the girl and the boy. The girl I don't that character is not introduced. I suspect it's based off of a real person. The boy is literally some guy she met on the bus one time.
you told me about that. I couldn't find the animation. I'll have to watch it after this. But yeah.
It's a cartoon. It was a cartoon that was like a Patreon exclusive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's explained where the imaginary guy comes from. He's
Okay.
like some random person she met on a bus.
Yeah. So I mean, she has no friends at all. I mean, her sisters are like really the only people her age she socially interacts with. And ultimately, she's kind of created this like fantasy friendship with two people. As John just said, a man or like a guy her age, uh, who she met on the bus while I think listening to Death Grips or
Yeah, yeah,
something. And the guy was like, "Oh, I love that Death Grips album," and she was like, "Oh, we'll play it at our wedding or something, right?" And then, and then the guy like said, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Right? Is that basically what happened?
yeah, pretty much.
And then the girl, I don't think we know anything about the girl yet, but she's kind of like she's like a white goth girl with like white highlights in her hair, and she wears an ankh around her neck, which I think John's gonna want to talk about.
Yeah, there's
Um,
some symbol. There's a lot of interesting references and symbolism in the show. We can get
yeah,
to later.
yeah,
But they
um,
basically they exist in her mind to affirm her.
Yes, and to alleviate her loneliness. Yes, exactly.
So in one scene, she like makes fun of Mai to her imaginary friends, and they all laugh.
Yeah,
Right. So
and
it's
like
like a
it's like
way
there's
of
also like this thing
venting.
where like she like opens her eye while laughing. You ever
Mm-hmm.
notice that? And like I'm just
Yeah, to
like,
like
what do you
see if
think
they're
that?
actually laughing too.
Yes, exactly. And it's
Yes.
like that's an interesting. Like she doesn't even believe that her own illusions can laugh at her or laugh with
Yes.
her. Like she's so broken. Yes, exactly. And yeah, I mean she's basically a femcell. I mean that's how I would describe her.
Yes.
Yeah, and the entire story is her like barely surviving, barely passing her high school history course.
Yeah, and it's not hard. Like that's the thing. Is like they're not.
No,
It's the
it's like
teacher
a joke.
admits like this is not a very hard project. You're just not very smart.
Yes, exactly. Um, and I mean, well, I think Mai is actually fairly smart. I think she's just like super
She's
autistic,
just
basically.
yeah. She's very autistic and very self-centered.
Yeah, so like she probably could make a really good history presentation, get an A, but like she wastes all of her time making a presentation of why she should be like class leader or whatever it's called.
Class representative. Yeah.
Yeah, class representative leader, and like she obsessed over it and wasted a bunch of time making a presentation on that when she could have made a history presentation.
Yes. Geschiedenis Präsentatie.
Yes, exactly.
Geschiedenis Präsentatie.
Okay,
I love
so
Dutch compound nouns. They're so funny.
yes, Dutch is a wonderful language. It's very beautiful.
It's like just bad German.
I like yeah. All you like to speak German, just learn, or to speak Dutch, just learn German like poorly, and then learn English, and then just merge it together. There you
Yeah.
go. Now you're kind of speaking Dutch. So, anyways, that's the characters. I think we should talk about the symbolism, and I'll let you
Well, there's
lead
like the
that.
teacher. There's the teacher too. I can't remember her name. She's
Oh
really
yeah,
not that important. She just kind of like drives the plot forward by being like an antagonist.
yeah. So the teacher is some middle-aged Dutch woman. Uh, she's an alcoholic, clearly. She's. I don't think she completely hates her job, but I think she hates the three sisters. She does not
Yes.
like them at all.
No, she does not like them at all.
Um, and ultimately, she after the first presentations, which were all failures, Maya didn't even make a presentation. Mai's presentation was really good and complicated, but it was not about history at all. It was just about why she should be class representative and why they should enslave the freshman high school students. And then Coco made a presentation about like hentai or something. So that all those three failed, and they're all sitting in her office. And then she basically says, I'm going to help you because you guys are stupid, not because I like you. And she assigns them to make history presentations about their homelands, or two of them at least about their homelands, and then one of them about kind of a mistaken homeland.
Yeah. So
Um,
Maya was actually born in Brabant,
which
but
is it's like southeastern Netherlands.
yeah,
It is part of the Netherlands though.
but everyone like calls her a Belgian.
Yeah.
So the teacher like makes a mistake and assigns her Belgium.
Yeah. So she has to make the history of Belgium, when she probably should just make the history of Brabant or something like that. Um, and this obviously just drives the plot because basically Mai's strangely resistant to making another presentation. She repeatedly makes excuses for why she can't do it on a certain day. So the teacher just keeps pulling the due date back more and more and more until it gets moved to like 4 hours from now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that just leads to the girls having to like throw a presentation together, and hilarity ensues.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I mean, there's not really any other characters.
No, not
Uh,
really.
yeah. There's a bunch of interesting background characters that are like that. I think if the show gets animated, will be elaborated upon more.
Yeah,
Um,
I think some of them are actually from Studio Masa's like other works.
yeah, I think that's. I watched a couple other Studio Mass animations, so I think that is true.
I think some of them are references, either references or just direct characters from other shows that they've made.
Yeah. Um, and then we did see their parents for like 1 second. You see like the sides of their faces. Um, they just look. One of them looks like Maya, and the other one just kind of looks normal. So it's kind of just a very subtle hinting. I don't think the parents are going to be characters in the story though.
No, because it's a
In the
boarding
long run.
school. I think it's a boarding school. I think they
Oh,
live at
so
the school.
do you think they stay in the school 5 days a week and then they go
I
home on
think so.
weekends?
Yeah, I think it's a boarding school
Oh,
because
okay.
when Coco like she like breaks her computer and it flies out the roof,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
that's the outside of the school.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, that
So I
actually makes
think
a
it's
lot of
I'm pretty
sense.
sure it's a boarding school. It's like a girl. Actually, I don't know if it's an all girls. It's like just a Dutch boarding school.
Yeah, but I mean they do go to their parents at the end of the show because we see their parents for like 1 second.
Like barely.
You see
Yes.
like the sides of their faces, yeah. But anyways, yeah. So really, there's three main characters, and then there's the fourth character who acts as basically the antagonist. Um, and yeah, I mean that's the characters. Um, we basically summarize the story. I think people have a good understanding of what the story is.
Yes.
So we can just talk about the symbolism now.
Yeah. Do you want to start?
I mean, I know a couple bits of symbolism. I'm actually interested in the kind of colonial symbolism of the girls themselves
Yeah. Yeah.
because I mean, Coco is a descendant of the Boers, which I mean, if you don't know, the Boers are just Dutch people that settled in South Africa, starting in like the late 1600s. Um, and then, over hundreds of years, they've existed in South Africa, and today they're getting basically genocided by the government and by independent black terrorist organizations, basically. And more or less, they're kind of getting slowly driven out of parts of South Africa, and it's very sad. But obviously, no one in the Western media cares about it. Um, and she is colonial. She's ultimately a colonial result of Dutch colonialism, and then Maya, I think, is the strongest, like, kind of colonial symbol almost,
Yeah.
because she is half Indonesian and then half Dutch. Um, and then Mai Mai is also a colonial symbol, but kind of different, because Nagasaki was never like colonized by the Dutch, but
It was a trading. It
Nagasaki,
was a trading. It
yeah,
was a Western trading port where you
Nagasaki
had Dutch
was the
Dutch
only
presence.
port. Yeah, Nagasaki was the only port in Japan for hundreds of years where European traders could go to trade without getting killed instantly. So ultimately, there still is like a colonial trade aspect to Mai Mai as well. And I haven't 100% decided what Masa is trying to say here. I think there is possibly kind of a hinting at like this like future of the Netherlands is within its own colonies,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
like a great replacement theme, and kind of the positive and negative aspects of what that could look like for the Netherlands in the future. Um, I think that's perhaps where he's trying to go with that. That might be a little bit too deep into it. I do think there is kind of there's obviously a Dutch colonial aspect to this, but I'm not 100% sure what he's trying to go with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's clear that they're like that's represented at the end because in the end scene, the three girls are wearing clothing that represents their ethnic origin.
Yeah, yeah.
So Coco is wearing like the green and gold. Um,
It's like a
and
soccer uniform or something. Yeah,
yeah, and then uh, Maya is wearing the flag of Indonesia, basically
yeah, and like her
stylized,
knee high socks or whatever.
and then Mai Mai is wearing like the Japanese rabbit.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, because I watched the show last night. I'm just curious what Mai Mai was wearing, but that's what she is wearing. Also,
Yeah,
when they're sitting in the classroom, the posters on the back of the classroom are like colonial South Africa. It's a map of Indonesia, like placed on top of Europe to show how big Indonesia is, which is kind of just a flex. Like, is that? It's like, look what the Netherlands conquered. Like, I don't know. I just think it's funny. But and then there's another poster of just Japan. So ultimately, I think that's supposed. Oh wow. Okay, I actually just realized. Like, yeah, Maya's definitely mixed race because if you think about the symbolism of Indonesia and Europe being
Superimposed. Yeah.
superimposed on each other on a map. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Maya
It's
is a mixed race person. Yeah, I think that's basically confirmed.
yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Wow, like
there's a ton of
another symbolism gem, like dug
dude,
out
I
of the
haven't I
mines.
haven't like I haven't experienced this much like symbolism melatonin since I read Act 5 of Homestuck.
Like I got some of it from like studying FNAF.
Did I just say melatonin? I meant serotonin.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah. Okay. So that's kind of like the symbolism I'm most interested in is the girls themselves and what they represent to like Dutch society and maybe like because obviously like mass immigration is one of the most fundamentally important things in Europe right now. And I think the girls are almost like a representation of how the Netherlands is dealing with that
Yes.
or how it's affecting the Netherlands. So I think
Yeah.
that's an interesting discussion to have.
An interesting thing I noticed is that well, obviously everything is orange.
Yeah.
That's like the theme of the show. My Mai drinks a lot of orange juice in the show, and it's like played for a joke. You know what that's a reference to, right?
No, what is it?
William of Orange.
Oh, yeah, well, duh,
Yeah.
obviously. But
So it's
I
everything,
thought you were referencing something more complex.
and there's like portraits of him in the show. I think in various parts. I think there's one in the classroom. I think there's one in my Mai's room.
Yeah, yeah.
But interestingly, like religion is never mentioned.
Yeah, and I think that that's just a representation of the post Christian Europe, which I
Yeah.
think is basically a reality.
Yes. So
Europe is post Christian.
yes.
It's not like dying Christianity. Like the Netherlands is almost it's an atheistic society.
Yes.
Basically, all of Western Europe, west of Germany, is an atheistic society, except for maybe like Spain and Portugal and maybe parts of Italy or something.
Right. And to my Mai, who is aping like the most like sort of caricatured form of Dutch ultranationalism,
Yeah.
uh, does not seem to have any religious inclination.
Yes, that's really interesting. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, there's absolute like if she was like some autistic 4chan Dutch nationalist, I'm surprised she's not just a Calvinist or something.
Yeah, same thing
But
with
no,
Coco,
she
actually.
yeah, and Coco could be like a Calvinist or whatever the boards are.
Yeah, they're Calvinists.
But no, they both are just atheists, and Maya is just an automatic atheist. And I think that that's just a clear representation of post-religious Europe in general.
Yeah, like they have like the symbol and reference to the old era, but
In
like
wait,
even
where?
when they
Oh, in William of Orange.
yeah, and even when they talk about the history, their history presentations, they don't reference like the Dutch independence movement or really
Yeah, I
any
mean
of the
that's
actual any of the actual religious conflict, which is like a massive portion of Dutch history.
yes. I mean, like the 80 Years' War with Spain, like that is the Dutch War of Independence, um, and I mean, ultimately the Netherlands exists because of Protestantism.
Yes.
Um, if the Netherlands, if Protestantism never came about, realistically, the Netherlands probably would have been annexed by Germany or whatever, like
Yeah, it
hundreds
would
of years
probably just
later.
be a German province today.
Yeah, but no, now it's an independent state with its own identity because of that religious difference. But now that doesn't matter. Um, which I think that's interesting from like my Nietzschean perspective. I don't know if you have anything to say from your tradcath or Catholic perspective on that, but
Well, there really isn't an answer because like South Africa just wouldn't exist and the Netherlands just wouldn't exist.
yeah, I
Like
mean
you
that's
can
just
imagine, like you can come up with like weird alt history versions of what could have happened 500 years ago and how that would change the present, but really, it's just we wouldn't know.
well, no, I just mean uh, like post Christianity in Europe is an interesting topic to me.
Yeah, well, it's like this in the show. It's just assumed.
Yeah, it's just now the norm. But okay. Um, so what else do you want to talk about with symbolism? I know like you've just been deep diving like crazy.
Yeah, the Onk.
Yes, yes.
Healthy and lively autist.
Yeah, so just
So
to remind everyone, the Ankh was on Maya's imaginary friend, who was a goth girl, basically.
yeah, and it's like interesting because it's like one of the only pieces of religious symbolism in the entire show,
Yes, yes.
and it represents her like health and liveliness.
Yeah, and it's most prominently shown when Maya's like pretending to kill herself,
Yes.
which that is another thing. Like Maya does pretend to kill herself in front of her imaginary friends, and ultimately, her imaginary friends call her cringe. So that's kind of an interesting, like, life affirming imaginary space almost.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, the girl who's wearing the Ankh is the one who calls her cringe in the first place.
Yeah. She's almost like a reference to like Anubis,
Which
the
god is it?
god of
Is
death.
that the dog?
Yeah.
The dog god? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. She's like the psychopomp,
Okay.
rejecting Maya's offer of suicide.
And like, I mean, you could almost like this kind of stretch, but it's like this like new age, new like kind of crypto pagan spiritual religion that's present in the West today.
Yeah.
Like a little bit of that too. Maybe that'll be in the show more. I wouldn't be surprised. Um, and yeah, I mean, what do you have any other symbols?
I mean, that's it. It's a 25-minute show. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah, there's
symbolism in a
there's
25-minute show.
there's a bunch of references to the Dutch and like to Dutch culture, which I don't understand. I obviously don't speak Dutch at all. And I'm sure like what I like about this show is it's clearly a Dutch show, and we said this at the beginning, but it's also like this is consumed by a Dutch audience.
Yeah, it's meant for
Like if you look in the comments, it's overwhelmingly Dutch comments with the occasional English comment.
and a bunch of Russians.
Yes.
Russians love
Based.
Ongezellig for some reason.
But yeah, I mean, I think the show once again proves the infinite superiority of European art and culture and humor, because it's just so subtle
Yes, this is
and
theater, not those
enjoyable.
decadent Oriental films of yours.
Yeah, decadente orientale, like
Tekken Animatsi film.
yes. Um, I mean, I guess that's everything. We could kind of wrap up. Uh, you know, Maya's the best girl. I think that's basically been established. Um, my understanding, your team Coco. I find
Yeah,
that find that deeply deeply subversive.
Coco is vitalism. Coco is vitalism.
No, like the problem with like from the Nietzschean perspective, Coco is not tragic. There's nothing tragic about her. Well, there's a couple things tragic, but she's not tragic enough. She's overcome her own tragedy, and Maya is like the Dionysian tragic figure that needs to be saved. So, from my perspective, that is why Maya is best girl. I mean, I think there's no debate
Okay. Okay.
here. But yeah, I mean that's more or less it. Anything else?
I mean, I'm sure I could think of other stuff. I mean, these are almost the girls are almost like caricatures of right-wing people. Like
I agree. Yeah, I actually do. Yeah, that's more or less true.
like you can kind of see these archetypes in real people.
Yeah, I mean, Maya would be an incel. Mai is kind of like a chud autist,
Yeah.
and then Coco is like a Giga Chad, basically a Stacy.
Yeah.
She's like a Chad Stacy, but she's also right wing. I don't really know like where does that exist like in the right? Would you say?
I don't
Like
know, but
what
I've met that kind of archetype before.
I've seen these.
I've
seen
met
these
that.
people
I've
before.
seen that archetype in South Africans.
Yes, yes,
This like
yes. South
extremely,
Africa, yes,
this extremely, like vibrant optimism.
yes,
That
yes,
you,
exactly.
that is a very South African thing.
Like yeah, there's South African guys, in our circles, who are like making like futurist art and like have like statues of like soldiers in industry and whatever, and like they have like Chad physiognomy, and I think that could definitely be what Coco kind of signifies.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is true. Yeah, the girls definitely have this. I mean, this show is like so deeply entrenched in online culture, um, and I think that's also kind of why it's so enjoyable. Is it's like a show for us
Yeah.
basically,
Let's
and
talk about
that's
the.
why. Yeah, sorry, what?
No, I just when you're done with that, go ahead.
Oh, and that's why it's so popular on Shardy. Is like
Yes.
this
Yes.
is us. Like this is our show. This is us. We can like project ourselves onto these characters, and we can like fantasize about these characters and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing I want to talk about is the humor. The humor of it is like I said, very un-American.
Yes, it's very subtle and it's delivered. It's just delivered. It's not, and there's no shock. Like there's no shock value anywhere in this story.
No.
I wouldn't say there's a single moment where you're supposed to be like, "Oh my god," you know.
Wow, I
I
can't
mean,
believe they went there.
yeah, like this just sounds like girls bickering oftentimes. Um, Maybe more like autistic girls, but like they're like this is just bickering between siblings almost.
Yeah.
And then like when Maya like says like, it's better to have no friends than no parents. It's like I could see like a femcel resentful girl like saying that to her sister.
Yeah.
So like it's just real, but it's still funny.
Yeah,
You know?
it is, and it's also there's no like I don't know, like there's something very inauthentic about American irony.
Like, can you give me like an example?
The the entire the entire premise of shows like Family Guy is a sort of like inauthentic irony. Like
Yeah, yeah,
there's no gravity to it.
yeah. I mean,
And even in
yes,
shows like I don't know, like BoJack Horseman and stuff, where they try to be like serious and heck and social commentary, it's not. There's no subtlety to it,
yes, yeah. I mean, yes, exactly. Like
and there's no
it's like
sincerity to it.
depicted. It's depicted in like the worst way possible, oftentimes. And
Yeah,
there's like in comparison to Zelig, like Ongezellig is literally just a week or a day in the life of the modern Dutch students, the modern Dutch youth. Obviously there's some like stretches of the imagination, but there's nothing crazy, and there's not. It's not like okay, if like it's like it'd be super on the nose and not funny at all. But like this show kind of just depicts what the Netherlands is like right now in like a post-colonial great replacement age, and how daily life operates under those conditions realistically.
yeah,
And I think that's what generates the humor of it, and that's why it's so good. Um, in comparison to like Family Guy, or like in Family Guy, you know, like Trump supporters are like the most evil beings in existence and destroy communities or whatever, and the social commentary is about as subtle as a fucking sledgehammer. Yeah, I could totally see what you mean.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Um, I feel pretty satisfied with what we talked about.
yeah. You should go watch Ongezellig.
Yeah, I mean, you should just link it down below.
Yeah,
Don. Um, and I mean, I don't know. I'm considering throwing him some money.
yeah.
I
There's
don't
a
know. It's like Dutch Patreon. I don't know if we can even use it.
yeah. It's kind of I don't. None of it's in English, so I don't really know
Yeah,
how
but
to
like
use it.
I don't even know like if my payment if I could even pay him money or anything. Um, but you can support this show on or not this show. You can support Ongezellig on Patreon or Dutch Patreon, and I'd be really happy to see this show enter kind of a steady production for maybe one season, maybe like 10 or 15 episodes. That'd be great.
Yeah, yeah. I think it'd be a very entertaining episode.
Yeah, and
Um,
ultimately, I think that shows like Angelig are really on the cutting edge of kind of art almost, which I think is kind of weird to say that, but like I think it's true. It's like they can deal with online culture, and like they can really they can make something good out of it, and they can how do I want to put this? is they can kind of put it forward as an art piece, basically.
Yeah, and it also doesn't. If it's one person, if it's one team making it, you don't fall prey to the trap of like community sourced entertainment media,
Which is what?
like the SCP Foundation.
Oh yeah, like that.
Like I don't
That
know if you
became like
noticed,
more
they've recently like retconned out characters from the
from
lore.
SCP.
Yeah, they've
Is it
retconned out
like
characters because like the people who created those characters were like predators, which I mean, knowing the community that comes out of, and the kind of people that run the forum, that sounds about right. But seriously, like it's completely at this point, the lore of that collaborative art project is so unstable
yeah?
because
There's like three different timelines, aren't there?
well, that was always a problem. There were always a problem with conflicting timelines, but like
Yeah,
they're literally like retconning characters out now,
yeah. I mean,
like established lore.
like kind of a problem with the internet is like as things become bigger, they tend to become like Redditized, I would say.
Yeah,
And like Ongezellig is actually still small. I'm pretty sure none of the episodes have more than 1 million views,
no, they don't.
which I think is. I mean, I don't really. I kind of hate this like meme where it's like, oh man, this was so much better when it was tiny. But it's like it's almost is kind of true. Um, and that like realistically, that could only be avoided if the Angelig team stays small and it avoids kind of this growth into like a Reddit phenomenon or something. But yeah, that's basically my full thoughts on that.
All right, thanks for watching the show, everyone. Maybe we'll get back to making weekly episodes.
I think, I mean, yeah, I could see us making a few episodes. I mean, there's interesting events happening today. Maybe we could make like an episode kind of talking about that next week.
Yeah, Odyssey
Uh,
exclusive.
I don't know, but so yeah, sounds good.
All right, see you next time.